The copper backsplash turned my stomach to ice. It happened before my brain could even catch up. I was adjusting my veil in the polished metal. It represented 3 months of hand restoration work. I had spent hours creating a perfect mirror finish. And then I saw her reflection behind me. It was Brenda, my new mother-in-law. Her manicured hand was hovering over my champagne glass on the bar. I saw something small and clear between her fingers. 3 drops fell in slow motion. Tap, tap, tap. My throat closed. It was not from fear. It was from the sudden and sharp clarity of understanding. The metallic taste flooding my mouth was not panic. It was recognition. Every dismissed insult, every calculated exclusion, every engineered humiliation over 2 years had been leading here. It led to this moment. To a dangerous substance in champagne at my own wedding reception. She did not see my eyes watching in the copper. She smoothed her dress. She walked away toward a cluster of guests. Her posture radiated satisfaction. My hands did not shake as I reached out. I switched our glasses. The crystal stems felt cool and solid. They felt real. The simple physics of the exchange grounded me. Her glass now sat where mine had been. My untainted champagne was in my hand. The wedding drama everyone would remember had not even started yet. My name is Rachel. I am 31 years old, and I am a restoration architect. This is the story of how I learned that some structures need to collapse before you can build something stronger. Most brides would be hyperventilating in the bathroom right now. But I spend my days calculating load-bearing capacity. I spend my time identifying structural weaknesses before buildings fall down. I recognized the signs of imminent failure. I saw the hairline fractures that spread. I felt the weight that accumulates silently until something snaps. Standing at that bar. I did not feel afraid. I felt the way I do when I am examining a compromised beam. I felt calculating. I felt methodical. I was waiting to see if it would hold or if it would give way. I walked back to the head table. My heels created a steady rhythm against the hardwood. My pulse registered at my wrists. It was elevated but controlled. 82 beats per minute. I checked worse structural integrity under better circumstances. I sat down next to Marcus. He was the man who spent his days performing pediatric heart surgery. But somehow he could not diagnose the malignancy in his own family. He squeezed my hand under the table. His thumb was tracing my ring when he looked at me. His eyes held so much unguarded love that my chest ached. "You are glowing," he whispered, 10 feet away. His mother raised the glass I had been meant to drink. It was the one now filled with whatever she had dropped into it. Her eyes found mine across the reception hall. It was cold calculation wrapped in expensive makeup. She lifted the champagne in a silent toast. Her mouth was curving into something that was not quite a smile. That look said one thing. Checkmate. She thought she had won. She thought I was just some blue-collar interloper who had stumbled into her dynasty. She thought I was a problem to be eliminated with money or chemistry. I raised my water glass in return. My hand remained steady. The water tasted sharp and clean. It tasted like clarity. I watched Brenda take a long sip of the tainted champagne. She was so confident in her cruelty. She was so certain of her control. For 2 years, she had treated me like a squatter in her son's life, like an infestation to be eradicated. But she had forgotten something crucial about restoration architects. We know exactly where the weak points are, and we know exactly when a structure is about to fail. I set down my glass. I smiled back at her. Then I waited. To understand why I did not scream, why I did not knock the glass from her hand or call for help. You need to understand the architecture of our conflict. This was not a sudden explosion. This was the final demolition phase of a 2-year campaign. The Harringtons are what people call old money. This mostly means their wealth is inherited. and they are terrified of anyone who actually earns their living. I met Brenda at the estate inspection. I was wearing work boots and a hard hat covered in plaster dust from the ceiling medallions I had been restoring. She looked at my hands like they carried disease. "Marcus," she said. She did not speak to me. "Are you hiring contractors for the West Wing?" "Mom, this is Rachel, my girlfriend." Her expression did not change. She just said, "Oh." She said it like she had stepped in something. The insults were never obvious. They were structural. They were small compromises in the foundation designed to make me collapse over time. She would forget to include me in family dinner invitations. She would introduce me to their country club friends as Marcus's little project. She ignored my master's degree and my architecture license. She would ask me at holiday gatherings when I planned to settle down into something more feminine. But the real failure point came 6 months ago. I was sitting in her library. Leather-bound books surrounded us like witnesses. She slid an envelope across her mahogany desk. Inside was a cashier's check for $150,000. "You are a lovely girl." "Rachel," she said. Her voice was warm in that particularly cruel way. "But let us be practical. You build things with your hands. We acquire things with our names. You will never be comfortable at this table, and I am simply trying to spare you the inevitable embarrassment." I stared at the check. It represented more than my parents had made in 3 years combined. Then I slid it back across the desk. "I think you are underestimating the going rate for skilled labor." "Brenda, I am not for sale." That is when her eyes changed. That is when I stopped being a nuisance and became a threat. And threats in Brenda's world had to be neutralized. There is a concept in psychology called an extinction burst. I learned about it studying how materials respond to stress. But it applies perfectly to narcissists. When a child realizes screaming is not working, they do not quiet down. They scream louder. They escalate to a frantic peak right before they finally give up. It is the last desperate explosion of energy to force the world back under their control. The week before the wedding was Brenda's extinction burst. On Tuesday, she called our florist. She claimed the bride had died in a car accident and the order should be canceled. The florist called me first to offer condolences on my apparent death. Thank God she did. On Thursday, I found her alone in the bridal suite examining my veil. When she left, there was a jagged tear through the antique lace. It caught on my bracelet. She said, "She acted all concerned, but I know the tensile strength of French lace. You have to want to rip it." I repaired the tear with gold thread. It is a technique I use in historic restoration. I did not tell Marcus. If I did, she would spin it. She would call me paranoid. She would say I was imagining things under wedding stress. She relied on her behavior being so extreme that rational people would not believe it. So when I saw the vial at the reception, everything locked into place. This was not random hatred. This was the final detonation. She could not stop the wedding. So she decided to ruin it. She wanted me sick. She wanted me humiliated. She wanted me collapsing in front of 200 of the city's elite. She wanted to prove I was weak. She wanted to prove I was messy. She wanted to prove I was unworthy of the Harrington name. She wanted a disaster. I just decided to let her be the victim of her own design. Structural failure is rarely instantaneous. Before a building collapses, it groans, rivets pop, wood splinters. You just have to be quiet enough to hear it. The reception hall erupted in applause as Marcus finished his speech. He was charming. He was self-deprecating. He was perfect. He sat down and kissed my cheek. He whispered that he was the luckiest man alive. Then the room went quiet. The tapping of a spoon against crystal cut through the noise like a warning bell. Brenda stood. She looked regal in her silver gown. The tainted champagne flute with its gold rim was held high. The room waited. She smiled at the guests. Then she turned her gaze to me. It was a predator's smile. "Marriage," she began. Her voice projected with practiced ease, "is about partnership. It is about knowing who you are and where you come from." A few of her friends at table 4 chuckled knowingly. And most importantly, it is about trust. Knowing the person sitting beside you has your best interests at heart. She locked eyes with me on the word trust. I did not blink. "To the happy couple," she said. She raised the glass. She tipped it back. I watched the golden liquid disappear. I watched her throat work as she swallowed. Once, twice. She drained it, for a moment. Nothing happened. She set down the glass. She looked triumphant. She turned to my father. She started discussing his golf game. 1 minute passed, then 2 minutes passed. I sat perfectly still. My hands were folded in my lap. I was counting seconds like a metronome. At 2 minutes and 47 seconds. The groaning started. Brenda stopped mid-sentence. She blinked rapidly. Her hand flew to her throat. Her face was usually a mask of foundation and composure. But it turned a violent shade of gray. She tried to stand. Maybe she wanted to excuse herself. But her knees buckled. She grabbed the tablecloth. She pulled an elaborate lily centerpiece down with her. Then the emetic did exactly what chemistry dictated. It was not polite. It was violent. Brenda became ill. It was a guttural and ugly sound that cut through the string quartet. Her body violently rejected the substance. It went across the head table, over the silk runner, over the china, over the skirt of her custom gown. The smell hit instantly. The woman who had spent 60 years cultivating untouchable perfection was now suffering on the floor in front of 200 witnesses. "Mom," Marcus shouted. He jumped up. "Mom!" She looked up at him. Her eyes were unfocused. She was gasping. "I do not." She slurred. "I do not feel." She collapsed sideways into the mess she had made. The room erupted into chaos. I stayed seated for 1 second longer. I watched the ruin. It was ugly. It was tragic. And it was exactly what she had ordered for me. In a crisis, most people panic. I stood up and took charge. I told the DJ to cut the music. I directed the coordinator to clear a path. Marcus was on the floor checking her vitals. His surgeon training kicked in. He was shouting commands about pulse and airways and pupil dilation. The paramedics arrived in 4 minutes. They loaded Brenda onto the stretcher. She was barely conscious. She was moaning incoherently. As they lifted her, the beaded clutch that had been resting on her lap slid off. It hit the floor. The clasp snapped open. Contents spilled across the hardwood. A lipstick, a compact mirror, and a small empty glass vial. Marcus saw it. He froze. But that was not the smoking gun. Next to the vial was a piece of heavy cream-colored stationery folded into a square. I reached down and picked it up. I knew what it was before I opened it. Brenda's handwriting. Elegant looping script. I walked over to Marcus. He was staring at the vial. His face was pale. "Marcus," I said quietly, "read this." He looked at me. He was confused. Then he took the paper. I watched his eyes scan the words. "Ladies and gentlemen, I must apologize for this interruption. My new daughter-in-law has struggled for years with personal demons. We hoped wedding stress would not trigger a relapse, but it seems the alcohol was too much. Please forgive the mess. We will get her the help she needs." It was a speech written before the reception started. She had not just planned to harm me. She had planned the narrative of my destruction. She was going to take the microphone while I was suffering. She was going to frame my collapse as a drunken breakdown. She was going to destroy my reputation forever. I watched the change happen in Marcus's face. It is a rare thing to see a man become an orphan while his mother is still breathing. The concern vanished. The panic disappeared. His eyes went cold and clear. He looked at the note, then at the vial, then at the woman on the stretcher. He finally saw the architecture of the trap. He realized the monster was not hiding under the bed. She was the one who had tucked him in at night. He folded the note carefully. He put it in his pocket. When he looked at the paramedic, his voice sounded like metal grinding against stone. She did not have a stroke. She ingested an emetic and possibly a sedative. Check her bag for additional substances and call the police. An hour later, we found ourselves at the hospital. The place smelled like antiseptic and shattered illusions. Brenda was stabilized in a private room. The drugs were flushed from her system. But the legal toxicity was just beginning. The police waited in the hallway. Officer Nolan was there. He was a man who looked like he had witnessed enough family disasters to fill a library. He took my statement. I did not need to be emotional. I just needed to be efficient. While the paramedics had been loading Brenda, I had texted the venue manager, because I had restored the Harrington estate. I knew exactly where the security cameras were positioned. I had the footage in my inbox before the ambulance reached the hospital. I showed Officer Nolan the video. Timestamp: 2:47 p.m. Brenda looks around. She pulls the vial. She drops the substance. High-definition proof of felony assault. Marcus walked out of his mother's room. He had aged a decade since morning. He walked past me. He walked past his father, who sat with his head in his hands. He went straight to the officer. "My mother is awake," Marcus said. His voice was clinical. "She wants to make a statement." "Did she confess?" Officer Nolan asked. Marcus laughed. It was a dry and humorless sound. "No. She told me she did it to save me. She said Rachel was a gold digger ruining the Harrington bloodline. She said I would thank her someday." I watched Marcus carefully. This was the moment. The cord was either going to snap or it was going to strangle us both. Brenda had played her final card. It was the mother knows best defense. She was banking on 30 years of guilt and obligation to make him drop the charges. Marcus reached into his tuxedo pocket. He pulled out the cream-colored stationery. "Officer," he said. He handed over the paper. "My mother did not just assault my wife. She planned a character assassination. She wrote this before the reception started. This proves premeditation." "Marcus, do not," his father whispered. "She is your mother." Marcus turned to him. "No," he said quietly. "She is a criminal. And if you pay for her lawyer, you are complicit." He turned back to Officer Nolan. "I am pressing charges, and I am requesting an immediate restraining order for both myself and my wife." I watched him sign the statement. It was the most romantic thing I had ever witnessed. He did not just choose me. He amputated the limb that was killing us. He cut her off with the precision of a surgeon removing a tumor. No tears. Just the sound of a pen on paper. Finalizing the divorce between a son and his toxic origin. The legal battles eventually settled. Life moved forward. It has been 14 months since the wedding. Brenda is currently serving a 28-month sentence for aggravated assault and reckless endangerment. The toxicology report confirmed she had used syrup of ipecac. It is an emetic she had obtained by claiming her grandchild had swallowed something toxic. Her lawyer tried arguing diminished capacity, but the pre-written speech destroyed that defense. You cannot claim temporary insanity when you drafted a press release about it 3 days in advance. Marcus's father chose to stand by Brenda. He paid for her legal defense. He has not spoken to Marcus since the day charges were filed. Marcus grieved that loss too, but he says losing someone who would enable attempted assault was no loss at all. Marcus and I did not move into the estate. We bought a fixer-upper across town. Good bones, but needs work. Like us. I am sitting at our kitchen table working on a bowl I broke last week. It is a Japanese technique called kintsugi, that is spelled Kintsugi. You do not hide the cracks. You fill them with lacquer mixed with powdered gold. The philosophy is that the piece becomes more beautiful for having been broken. The fracture is where the strength lives. For a long time, I thought a perfect marriage meant no conflict. I thought it meant smooth surfaces and easy days. But Brenda taught me something valuable. She tried to shatter us. She hammered at every stress point until we would crumble. But she miscalculated the materials. When we sat in that hospital waiting room watching police lead her away in handcuffs. Marcus and I did not fall apart. We fused. The trauma did not leave a scar. It left a seam of gold. We trust each other with a depth most couples never reach because they are never tested. I know with absolute certainty he will choose me. And he knows I will see the threats he is blind to. I finish the bowl. The gold lines catch the afternoon sun. They shine brighter than the original ceramic ever did. It is imperfect. It is jagged. And it is unbreakable.